Hello, hello. This is the Look-See for October 15th, 2024. And as you'll see, a lot of things are heating up, which is probably good. Some things need to be resolved. So this month I spent a bit of time looking at the leadership in Canada, China, Ukraine, and England, and then looked at the illegal aliens coming into the US and what a bountiful set of possibilities they bring for our controllers. That said, there isn't much good news yet if you're looking at the next 10 to 12 months, unless you're excited to see the old system get out of the way. And I think that's what we're going to see. So the good news is coming, okay? Before I start, I want to note a couple of things. When doing a look-see in the past, I would just go looking to see what I could see. It was quick and easy, and things were often quite clear. Nowadays, that is not the case. I will be looking at something when another scene suddenly appears right on top of that and interferes in a way that's very distracting. Often the second scene is related to what I was originally seeing, which tells me we're in a time when a lot of problems are related to one another. They're all tangled up together. And solving one problem does not really help because it gets dragged back in our face by the whole cascade of collapse going on all around us. Other times I will be looking at something that I'm looking at, it looks so outrageous and unlikely that I end up stopping my own process to consider the improbability of the whole thing. Of course, that interrupts the process and I stall out, wondering if I'm seeing it correctly or if my imagination has suddenly gone wild. So I start over. And then the same thing happens again. Now, maybe this is just me running into my normalcy bias, and thus things just look improbable or impossible. But when what I see looks outrageous or so out of the ordinary, so unusual and unlikely in the normal course of everyday living, I end up not sure whether to say what I see or not. So things pile up in the visions. And what I've noticed over the past few months is that while I'm looking at the pile up that seems so over the top, other things are happening quietly in some corner that no one is paying attention to. So all that is to say there's a lot going on, and it will probably keep going on until we do something about it. So with that said, let's begin. Number one, the Mexican drug cartels are heating up with infighting. The cartels are heavily interwoven with the CIA and are no longer like 95% protected by the status quo of people just going about their business and ignoring cartel activities. People think of it as something happening far away in some other country. The cartels have also been infiltrated by some of the white hats, we'll call them the white hats, the good guys. And some of our most hidden, sophisticated surveillance equipment has been used to spy on both the cartel bosses and to follow the activities of some of their operations engaged in child sex trafficking. So heads up for those of you along our southern border in Texas and New Mexico. Watch your children. Number two, Justin Trudeau is taken out, or it has been made to appear that he has been taken out, when in reality, he and his immense fortune are disappeared. and he takes on a new identity for a while. Trudeau is a direct descendant of one of the original 10 bloodline families, and he inherited a massive amount of wealth. The families have been pulling strings of control and power for millennia. And they have been aligned with the reptilian groups working to take over the earth. The top ET group, the masterminds behind the takeover plan, gave up and left 3 years ago, a little over 3 years ago. But they left behind a lot of their corrupt people, corporations, and equipment. These lower level minions did not have the whole story of who was in charge above them and who was actually making the decisions. And they didn't know what the end goal was. They thought it was about making money. The next level up above them thought it was about making money and getting governments to do what the corporations wanted. The next couple levels above that thought the goal was making money, gathering power for themselves, and replacing governments with themselves. But the ETs at the very top were focused on taking over the entire planet, getting rid of governments altogether in any form, corporate or otherwise, reducing the human population and replacing the remaining humans with human reptilian hybrids who lived and worked solely to serve and support the reptilian controllers. Now, the bloodline families, who are mostly in positions of royalty or in hiding, are realizing they aren't going to be able to impose their rules and forms of control on the people. They are planning to take their massive fortunes and disappear. As for the reptilians, this is their third or fourth try at taking over planet Earth, and they will return in some distant future to try the takeover again. Their hope is that the hybrids will survive the regular cataclysms that occur on planet Earth and will help to repopulate, giving the future reptilians a bit of an edge. At the moment, the reptilians have one last shot at taking over, and that is to get Donald Trump elected, then get rid of him and take over in the aftermath of confusion, shock, and disorder that follow his death. If Trump survives, thanks to his security people, we have a chance to reorganize and evolve past the third dimension by moving into the fourth dimensional consciousness, which is aligned with life rather than death. Right now, we're all aligned with death. Number 3, the financial system in the US and the West is sliding downhill and emitting a silent scream as it goes. Shortly after the November 5th election, in fact, I had a vision of a date, November 9th. I wasn't sure what that was about, but it comes up every time I think about the financial thing. November 9th, 11/9. So shortly after the November 5th election, the population begins to hear that scream as banks become even more unwilling to hand over the cash that people have deposited. People try not to panic, and the result is a silent but deadly and growing run on the banks. I've said this before, but it still looks like Bank of America is going to be the first to fall. As I was looking at the banking system, I saw a vision of Bank of America. A bomb had just gone off, the structure was on fire, and people were running in every direction. Other banks followed in what looked like a gigantic mudslide. But it looked like Bank of America was the start. Other dramas having to do with water and the flooding of the Fed and the rest of the banking system were occurring in this picture that I was seeing, and they were responsible for the mudslide. I thought this vision was symbolic, not literal. Maybe it's literal, but I think it's symbolic, with the quote unquote bomb being something becoming known about Bank of America. The water and floods and mudslides symbolize the flooding emotions and fears of the population, which ends up in the mud, muddy thinking, and unable to maintain any clear thoughts about what to do or how to handle the situation. If this occurs, don't panic. We can take care of ourselves. Let the banks deal with the mess they have made. Number 4. The price of oil goes up and keeps inching up in spite of efforts to keep it low just long enough to get past the election. In a first look at this situation, it looked like there was a problem with oil producers, like maybe they were having trouble either shipping or storing oil. I wasn't going to say any more about that, but then this past Sunday, I saw a headline about a huge pipeline fire near Houston, Texas, and I was immediately struck by the intuition that somebody sabotaged that pipeline. It was a big one, like 12, 15 inches in diameter. Since the U.S. reserves of oil are gone, let's hope that bad people are not going to sabotage whatever oil we have left. As I've mentioned in the past, we're headed to a point in time where the dollar is dead and we cannot buy anything, including oil. Number 5, the U.S. government continues to recall meat. Most of this recalled meat is perfectly good, and those agencies testing it are paid to either sabotage the test packages or to ignore and lie about the test results, or to greatly expand the numbers and kinds of meat recalled. This meat is then confiscated by the U.S. authorities and stored in secret locations to secure the cabal members. When times get tough, they will not only have food for themselves, but they will be able to offer food as bribes to desperate people. Number 6, the election happens in some places, but for some reason, it's declared invalid because some people didn't get to vote. The destruction in Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, and Tennessee is the excuse. It looks like there are enough electoral college votes to elect Trump just using the basis of the people who did vote. Even if we assume that all of the electoral college votes that would have come from Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, and Tennessee, if they all went to Harris, they would not be enough to change the 270 electoral college votes needed for Trump to win the election. Nevertheless, the election is still declared null and void. Also, I saw a hint of another natural disaster while looking at this whole election thing. I think we're under attack, people. Let me say it again. Keep your antenna up. Number 7. I had a brief vision of Ukraine's Volodymyr Zelensky being shot by one of the members of the Ukraine military. While I'm not a fan of Zelensky, this is not the kind of world I want. We can't just be killing somebody we don't like. There's no bottom to that kind of pit. Number 8. For 2 years now, I have been saying, gee, I see a lot of school closures. I saw more closures again this month. And now a report has come out from the National Center for Education Statistics. They have been tracking the school situation, and over 4,000 schools have closed over the last 2 decades. They are closing at a rate of about 8 schools per month, 8 to 10 schools per month. Those closing include regional colleges, technical schools, and business schools, leaving many students high and dry. They are often students who want more education, but they cannot afford the tuition or the fierce competition for admission at some of the big universities. When I was going to college back in the 1970s, my Pell Grant to attend Wayne State University, a wonderful school, was something like $1,200 per semester. This covered my tuition, books, and parking garage fees. All I had to do was show up. Today, tuition at many colleges and universities begins at $12,000 per semester. More if you take 4 classes per semester, more credit hours. Room and board will add another $20,000. That's ridiculous. Has the information in those many courses being taught suddenly become that much more valuable? No. In fact, it's probably less valuable because so much of it is old and suitable only for the old paradigm that we're moving past, especially in the sciences. However, the salaries of professors have gone up, probably because of the cost of living, and so has the cost of maintaining the buildings and the structures that make up the college itself. At what point do we stop spiraling up into financial insanity and discover the sanity of homeostasis? Looks easy. Number 9. There have been hundreds of attacks on churches over the past few years and a number of deaths. Many churches have hired and trained security forces to protect both church and churchgoers. The brother of a very good friend of mine shared that the megachurch he worked for, as part of their security team, had an entire room full of AK-47s, rifles, handguns, and other weapons right next to the vault where they kept their millions of dollars. Now it looks like the megachurches are really going to shrink quite a bit over the next 2 years. A lot. This may be partly because people don't want to gather in big groups, because such groups become easy targets. However, the entire message of churches also changes in response to the spreading knowledge that the Bible was not really the word of God. It was the word of a group of extraterrestrial controllers known as the Elohim. On top of that, when it becomes known that the US government has been working with extraterrestrials for decades and lying through their teeth about it, people will be upset. This upset will be compounded by the fact that government has also deliberately blocked us from having access to new and cheaper forms of energy, new healing tools, new forms of technology, new information about our true history, and new forms of consciousness. Anyway, a lot of churches fall apart. But after a couple of years, some of them reorganize on the basis of teaching members to see the world through a greatly expanded lens that is not only global, but interplanetary in scope. Some of the new churches coming they don't look and sound at all like the old churches. It looks like the message of many churches will finally begin to incorporate some truth drawn from science and technology, as well as some information about ETs and our galaxy. I thought some churches did a really good job with this new information, but a lot of others were completely frozen against anything new. Those were the ones that died out. Number 10. A new political scenario came up when I went looking to see, well, what's happening in Washington, D.C. this month? I talked about scenarios last month, 4 or 5 different scenarios. So this is kind of a new one. The first thing I saw was a vision of a body on ice. I thought this was a reminder that Joe Biden was long dead. Then I saw Kamala Harris waving goodbye as she left the White House. I interpreted that as she's going to lose the coming election or never make it to the election. Then there was an emergency, some kind of emergency that I saw involving water along both East and West coasts. The West Coast water problem was caused by an earthquake. The East Coast problem looked like a man-made situation, but I wasn't sure what the exact cause was. It could have been a storm, but it looked more like someone or something blowing water toward the coast of the U.S. that then suffered a lot of flooding. The flooding created a huge problem for the Federal Reserve System. It flooded the Federal Reserve. Banking was disrupted and banks came to a halt. This caused chaos among people because they were afraid they wouldn't be able to pay their bills. Really, let's stop right there. If that's all your life is about, paying bills in order to continue in your role as a debt slave, and you have never thought or looked any further than that, it's time to open your eyes and ask yourself a few questions. Are you going to die if your visa or mortgage payment is not made? I doubt it. Are you going to be thrown into jail and then be hung by the neck if your credit score drops? I doubt it. I know it's only a game, and I know you're only playing the game in a go along to get along manner, but what are you going to think about yourself and your life when the banking system comes apart? I'll tell you what I'm going to think. I'm going to think that banks have a problem, not me. I'm going to feel relief that perhaps we can now move forward without the threat of a collapse hanging over us. It's done. Finally, it's done. The wild imaginings of a banking collapse are often much worse than the reality. Over and over, I have seen that people will come together, cry together, work together, and begin to celebrate together. So that's what I'm going to think, to feel, and to look forward to. Number 11. I was tuning into Xi Jinping and events in China, and I was surprised by the amount of anger and dissatisfaction among the Chinese people. It might be worse than the anger in America. However, the really big surprise was the anger and dissatisfaction among those at the top of China's government. There's talk behind closed doors of how to get rid of Xi. The top power figures were also divided because not all of them want to get rid of Xi. Some want to use him. Those who want to get rid of him feel he's in the way of progress. They think they will never get ahead as long as the communist ideology is in control. They lean toward capitalism and they resent rules and interference by the Chinese Communist Party. It looks like another purge of top bureaucrats is coming in China. I also noted that Xi and his wife were having difficulties. Their relationship was never warm and friendly. It has always been very formal. However, things are now very cool, and there's a lot of frustration on both sides. Xi truly believes that communism can be used to make the world a better place for people. He thinks it'll help more people to have everything they need. His wife did believe that when she was younger, but now it's mostly lip service from her. She still uses her talents to promote the CCP dogma. She's a major singer. She's won all kinds of awards in China. But she herself feels that she's beyond the grasp of communism. If anything happens to unseat Xi, they will likely come apart. Number 12. It's becoming more widely known that the Vatican Bank is having great difficulty. I did not see anything on the horizon that could or would reverse this. It's as if the population of the world is turning away from Roman Catholicism. People are punishing the church for the many sexual scandals that have been revealed. The church has spent centuries trying to limit sexual activity, declaring it was only for the purpose of having children, telling people they were sinners bound for hell if they engaged in sex before marriage or even thought about sex with someone other than their spouse. And all the while, priests and bishops were secretly molesting young boys, using their power to molest and rape young women. Worse, many whistleblower reports claim they were and still are involved in the trafficking of children. This makes me sad, not for the church, but for the children and those people who were betrayed by it. Times change, but we all need something to believe in. How about believing in ourselves for a change? Number 13. In England, Keir Starmer may not last much longer. I think he just got elected. Anyway, the English people are more angry than the American people. And although the English tend to stuff a lot of what they feel, watch out. When they decide to blow, it's a major issue. I'm not sure how the English government works. They have a parliament, but it looks like there will be a call for a new election long before one is due. Starmer steps down due to harassment and ineffectiveness. And the arrangement now in place appears to dissolve. And even though I'm talking about next summer here before that dissolving occurs, he reminded me of a male Kamala Harris, completely ungrounded in reality. Number 14. Illegal immigrants and their presence in the U.S. are going to be used for a lot of things. Election disruptions, paid for votes so the cabal can stay in power, Street fights started deliberately so the powers that want to be can have an excuse to bring in the National Guard and declare martial law. They'll be used as early adopters of the digital money and CBDCs. They'll be used as cheap labor that will do menial work and allow the big corporations to think or to pretend that they have found the perfect way to beat high wages and maintain the illusion of wealth and power while creating a continuously widening gap between themselves and the people they consider to be beneath them. Sort of like we are all untouchables. Number 15. Rainfall in the Sahara is continuing to green the entire area. However, the greening is due to weather manipulation. People will move into that area. Some of them will pay good money, and then the rainfall will stop. People will leave, having lost everything, and then it will start over. It's a way of fleecing money out of people. Weather manipulation is a whole new toy in the hands of the unscrupulous. Number 16. For a couple of years now, I've been saying that the war in Ukraine was part of a plan to move Israel back to their original land. Perhaps you've read or heard that the scientific research confirmed that the Israelis are not Semitic people. They are Khazarians, and their original home was Ukraine. This move back to Ukraine is now being openly talked about as Israel targets Lebanon. Why are they going after Lebanon? Because Israel thinks Iran will attack Israel in retaliation for the Israeli attack on Lebanon. Israel will then call for help from the U.S. and will tell them, you need to go bomb Iran. If the U.S. threatens to bomb Iran, Russia will get involved in order to protect Iran. If Russia gets involved and is threatened, this will bring China into the fray. And the people trying to start World War III will finally be satisfied. The war will eliminate lots of people. It will make the cabal a lot of money selling weapons. It will provide a distraction from the crumbling financial system, and the distraction will allow the cabal to hang on and hopefully be among those who survive. They will then take charge and start over with a new financial system and new propaganda designed to make people believe they are being helped to recover from the war by the cabal. Number 17. As I was looking at the damage from Hurricane Helene, the thought crossed my mind that this was only the first of several directed weather events designed to create chaos among the American people. I sort of casually wondered where the next events would be, and I heard my own consciousness answer, quote, "It'll be along the northern states bordering Canada." It looked like a massive snow and ice event. As I was thinking about what this might mean, I was aware that natural disasters, quote unquote, natural disasters, were being planned for the entire periphery of the U.S. Pay attention. Heads up, everyone. Change is being pushed down our throats, and yet much of it regarding natural disasters is a lie concocted to cover up the use of weather manipulation to attack us, and then make it look like Mother Nature did it. If you haven't seen that already, if you haven't understood that yet, wake up. Number 18. For a population to evolve, they must learn to pay attention to the subtle things, the foundational things. Right now, the foundational things that have made life in the United States possible are under attack. This includes food, water, medicine, education, government, social cohesion, and money, and maybe a few other things besides. Science, business. It is highly stressful to be trying to maintain a normal life when you're in the middle of a war zone. You can say, oh, that stuff is all conspiracy theory. I don't know what you're talking about. But when a stray bomb blows your house to smithereens, your workplace burns down, an unexpected flood or fire or chemical accident occurs, you will be shocked and angry and perhaps displaced. And it will be mostly anger with yourself for not facing the reality around you. We are in a war here in the US. It is necessary and even comforting to maintain as much of your daily routine as possible, but this can also be deadly if something awful happens and you're not prepared physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. To evolve, we must survive. To survive, we must be awake and aware. Are we paying attention to the right things? Are we distracting ourselves from things we need to be watching and thinking about? People who are hungry for power and control are making agreements that will affect our future while we remain distracted or outright avoid dealing with them because we think those events are boring. They're less exciting. Or maybe we even think they're meaningless. They're not. They are signs and signals to us of what others are planning. I know people love drama. Drama gives people a sense of being involved in something exciting. It gives us something to focus on, something we can all talk about, and it's definitely more exciting and even dangerous than the paperwork or legislation that governs most of our lives. Be aware that those who don't want to spend time dealing with that paperwork and legislation will often be forced to spend time fighting the people who put out that paperwork and legislation. Pick your battles, people. Number 19. Natural medicine and energy medicine continue to gain ground, while chemical medicine and surgeries continue to lose ground. Drugs and surgeries will not go away, however, because sometimes we need rescue medicine. However, what's happening is a rebirth, reorganization, and a rebalancing of the world of healing. Drugs and surgeries cover up symptoms and seldom, if ever, deal with the root cause of disease or disability. You probably know this already, but John D. Rockefeller was responsible for the proliferation of drugs, the setup of the American Medical Association, the funding of medical colleges that taught only how to use chemical drugs and surgeries, and the prosecution of natural medicine practitioners back in the early 1900s. When I was in school studying to become a naturopathic physician, I was shocked at the endless persecution and jailing of anyone practicing natural medicine. The story of Harry Hoxsey is one example of that persecution. Benjamin Lust is another. Rockefeller used his money and his influence to get Congress to pass laws that said allopathic medicine, which is drugs and surgery, was the only legitimate kind of medicine. The rest were labeled as quacks. In the same way that people were burned at the stake or beheaded for espousing something other than what the governments of the Middle Ages approved of, our government continues to take out anyone who goes against their propaganda. We haven't come very far, have we? Number 20. Let's end this look-see on a good note as we celebrate the ruling by U.S. District Judge Edward Chen against the Environmental Protection Agency and their practice of promoting fluoride in tap water. Woohoo! The EPA's position has been that, well, fluoride might be hazardous, but the risk to humans is reasonable. Until the mid-1980s, the accepted dosage in water was 1.2 milligrams per liter. That's like 1 milligram, 1.2 milligrams per quart. That's a lot. That ends up being 4.8 to 5 milligrams per gallon. Maybe an adult can handle that, but to an embryo in the womb that's no bigger than a grain of sand at 4 weeks, and even at 8 weeks only weighs 4/100ths of an ounce, that's a huge amount of fluoride to be dealing with at exactly the time the brain and central nervous system are developing. 4.8 to 5 milligrams per gallon of water. If you add in the fact that we not only drink water, we use it to bathe, to shower in, it's in our toothpaste, we use it to cook with, to mix our orange juice and our drinks with, to water our gardens and fill our swimming pools. Wow. Anyway, a couple of cities and counties have decided to stop fluoridating their water, and they're both in Westchester County in New York. Abilene, Texas, has also stopped adding fluoride to their water. And I think this is a wonderful step in the right direction. Little signs, people, be watching for little signs. We're moving in the right direction. So that's it for this look-see. For those who are watching or listening for the first time, the look-see is a brief look at what's happening in our world and where the big trends are headed. Reality is not fixed. It's dynamic, and it changes according to what we're doing with our consciousness. Nothing becomes real unless we make it real. We make a choice. We take some kind of action. We put something together or take it apart. Those decisive actions are what determine the path and the outcome for us. And of course, once we put something in motion, it takes a lot to make a change or get things going in another direction. And that's exactly the reason for looking ahead. If we don't like the direction things are going, we can make some changes, appropriate changes, in a timely way, or prepare for what looks inevitable. If we see something we like, we can put some conscious attention on that and help things along. So let me say, it's important to look ahead and assess what's happening, what's changed, and where we are going so we know whether or not we need to do something different. So thank you so much for listening. Over the next month, think about what we can do to build a new earth. Little signs, little ideas, baby steps. and have a great month. Make a great month.